stay in touch with your vendors because a lot of them are putting up webinars that are pretty good, and they get recorded so you can come back to them later. Which kind of leads us into our program for tonight. NAB, I had my plane tickets and I had my hotel room, and as with the rest of us, that evaporated wisely, we now know. So NAB put together, I think it was in May, there was a virtualized NAB, and the information that's there that was done there, much or all of it is going to be available at least until the end of August. And I attended the induction of John Landecker into the Hall of Fame, and we did have a presentation from a number of people on the 8:20 a.m. in Frederick that I think was pre-produced because parts of it seemed to be pre-produced. But it was a good effort, and we've invited Skip to come in and tell us about it, and also cover what you can get out of it between now and August. What I'll do is I will mute all, and then I will unmute Skip, and when we get a little farther along, we can unmute or you can unmute yourself for a question, or you can do the raise hand or something. But we'll give him a quiet room to start.
All right, now I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Thumbs up? Yeah, okay, great. All right, I'm going to also try to share screen here. See how this works for slides. Thumbs up again. You got them? Okay, great. All righty. I am going to try to, yeah, there we go. All right. This should work. Thanks, guys, for doing this. Thanks, Eric, for the invitation. And as Eric said, we're going to run through what is still up and available from the NAB show in the on-demand part of the Express. But the other point of talking about this tonight, I think, is more general in the sense that this was one of the first shows that by the way the schedule worked out, to have to do this, to go virtual, and so we can use this as an opportunity to share what we learned by doing it, what we're planning to do going forward, and as we might be talking about, as some have already talked about earlier here, is what about a hybrid of the two going forward? Is because the new normal, whenever we get there, will never be the same as the old normal, and in many ways I think that would be a good thing, because we've been pushed to do a lot more work from home, a lot more remote, a lot more virtual, and why not keep the best of that going even after things do settle back down into a real face-to-face kind of world, or face-to-face mask, as it's being called. So we wanted to give you a look at that too. So a little of the behind-the-scenes sausage making on the process as we go along here. And actually, we'll start with that, because I think a lot of you can identify with what we went through there. Let's see if I can get this to move. There we go. So the move to a virtual show came about pretty quickly, as it turned out. As you recall, the way the process ran, in about early March, we started realizing this was going to be bad, and so on March 11th is when NAB announced there would not be a physical show in Vegas, and a week or so later, we announced that we would be doing a virtual show called the NAB Show Express, and that would be in about 2 months from when we decided to do it. So pretty quick ramp up taking place. Um, and our intent was obviously not to recover any revenue that were going to lose, because this show provides NAB, the organization, with about 70% of its budget each year. And as a result, the dues to members can be kept pretty low relative to what the costs of the operations are, and the primary operation being advocacy for the industry. Of course, highly regulated industry generally requires a pretty strong advocacy in DC. So um, we were trying and to keep the fact that the NAB show is, and we're lucky that it is, NAB is lucky that it is, has maintained itself as a pretty strong central meeting for the industry, certainly for the US, but to some extent even worldwide. So we wanted to keep that brand out there and still provide as much benefit to the industry as we could. Um, Obviously, the exhibit parts are hard to do virtually, but the conference content, the education content, is actually not too difficult to do. But still, the vast scale of NAB with tens of thousands of people that come in the hundreds of presentations and multiple tracks, putting that together in a way that made sense and could be navigated and useful to audiences was still a challenge, and we didn't have a lot to model at the time. And so what we did first was think about how we were going to do the virtual um, presentation, what platform or platforms we were going to use, how it was going to be able to be scalable properly for a good user experience. And so we looked at a lot of systems that were out there, surprising number of them when you start looking, actually. And there's more all the time now. And a few of them were in the process of scaling up at the time. And obviously, we're using one right now that has benefited. But a lot of industries have been using it, even schools, and it's been good for that company. They've gotten better at what they do. They've scaled up. The internet itself has scaled up. It's all been pretty amazing, actually, how well it works. And of course, we all benefit from being able to do it and staying in touch both with our colleagues as well as our workplaces. So we already, of course, had a lot of content ready to go or planned, obviously planned for a live presentation in Vegas. And we use a tool called Map Your Show. A number of other conferences use that as well, CES, for example. And it's a big database designed specifically for conferences and trade shows. And so it does all the conference floor, the exhibit floor maps and exhibitor listings. And this year we were using it also for our conference management. So that was already in there. And so we just decided we'd repurpose that to be used for our management of the conferences, but it also has a public facing piece, which is a part that would be used for navigation, and we'll take a look at that shortly to show you how to get around if you haven't been playing with it already. And then we also wanted to do live streaming. We settled on a company called Frequency to do the 2 days of live streaming that the event was focused on, May 13th and 14th. And then the on-demand content for video was handled by a company many of you are familiar with called Brightcove, a big streaming service provider and web provider of video hosting. So that we had worked with them before. Most of these companies were willing to do this also at either low or no cost with proper credits, which was also important to us because, as I said, we weren't trying to recover revenue, but we also didn't want to spend any more than we had to do the virtual piece of this. We also got closed captioning, AI-driven closed captioning provided gratis by a company called Caption Hub. And the AI captioning worked okay, but when you've got a lot of jargon, and B, well, and acronyms and things, and then you've got some accents as well. Some of the captions were not real accurate. So we did have the ability to, through the Caption Hub site, go in and manually correct. But that's a very labor intensive process, we learned. And so we didn't get started on that till very close to the show. And captioning is something it really shouldn't just be an afterthought. It should be, if you're going to do it, and you want to do it right, you really got to spend an adequate amount of time and effort. And the people who are doing the corrections, the manual corrections, kind of need to know a little bit at least about what the content, what the presenter is talking about, so they know what that acronym is or what that jargon is or how to find out how to spell it and so forth. And when it's for a vendor and the vendor sees it, you want them to be pleased with the outcome and get their names right and all that, and all their product names right and the jargon. So that was a big piece of learning. Because that didn't come together till very close to the actual show, whereas most of the other stuff we had in place earlier. So still 2 months was pretty quick turnaround for all this. What the show actually ended up being was we took most of the content we already had planned and converted it. And then we even added some new content. Some of that was specific to some of the early learning people had already to share about remote operations and the pandemic related material. And we did have from very early on advice from people who had done this before to say, do as much as possible pre-recorded. Don't rely on live, just because so much can go wrong with network backhauling of people, because everybody that was going to be remote themselves, and then so the remote, there was the the backhaul of the remote, as we're all familiar with, getting to the network headquarters, and then of course the streaming out. So lots of pitfalls, and there was a need for as much certainty as you could get. So a lot of pre-record, everything, I would say 95% of content that was run on those 2 days of the actual show event even was still pre-recorded before that, or recorded before that pre-recorded redundancy there. And some of that was done as what we call DIY, just do it yourself at home, using the Zoom platform, for example, or another place where you could record your own piece. Almost all the Be It papers were done that way. And then if there was going to be a panel where multiple people were needing to connect to each other in real time for the recording, then that was done through in some sort of managed way. And we had a partner called Broadcast Beat. They're the people that do at the show, they do that studio presentation where they have live people in the studio, and it goes out on a stream from the show in Vegas. And so they have a pretty slick setup. Unfortunately, we have a pretty good setup at NAB as well that we use for our webcasts, where we can bring in up to 4 remote guests and put them together. But that was all torn down because we were in the middle of our building move at that time, which had to actually get rescheduled and moved up forward because we knew things were going to be shutting down in DC, and we had to get all our stuff out of our old building and into the new building. So we didn't have the luxury of being able to use our own studio, so we had to rely on outside people for that. And then other folks just did conferences on Zoom themselves, with the moderator being like the organizer, and then that recording was was used in the schedule. So a variety of methods of getting most content pre-recorded. So when we did do the stream, we ended up doing 4 simultaneous full-time channels, 24 hours across 2 days. But the way it worked, we started at noon Eastern on the first day. So it was noon Eastern on the 13th to noon Eastern on the 14th. Each of the 4 channels had 8 hours of content that was then repeated twice for other time zones. So it filled to 24 hours that way. So the same exact 8 hours that ran from noon to 8 p.m. Eastern ran again from 8 to 4 a.m. Eastern, and then from 4 to noon Eastern. And then day 2, on the 14th of May at noon, we started with a whole nother fresh 8 hours of content across all 4 channels. And repeated that twice. So it actually didn't end till noon on Friday the 15th Eastern time. So that was, if you think about it, the live content, quote unquote live. It wasn't, there was actually a little bit of real live interaction that was done with Zoom meetings. But the bulk of that, the bulk of the rest of the content that was in those 4 streaming channels was pre-recorded and recorded 4 times 8 hours a day, 32 hours, 2 days, 64 hours. So 64 hours of content was streamed across those 4 channels on those 2 days. And then all of that is still available, plus the stuff that was live, which was really live, was recorded. So all of that is still available in the on-demand now. And in fact, because most of the stuff we did was already recorded, the on-demand content was available even during the 2 days. In fact, you could watch it before it actually streamed if you wanted to. And a lot of people did from our metrics. And of course, that's still, as we said, up there through August. And that includes both video and some cases just slide decks for folks that didn't do videos, or for those that did, sometimes you've got both. And we'll give you some examples of that in a second. So this was sort of an overview of everything that was in the show. These are all the different tracks. The ones that are highlighted there in that pink color were third-party conferences that would have been part of the Vegas event that were done by their hosting organizations separately. So they weren't hosted through our platforms. And in some cases, they required a registration, separate registration, that in at least a couple of cases, there was a fee involved. Obviously, for all the other stuff that's in blue, the two shades of blue, that was all free. That was NAB curated. And it was all available through our single platform that I described a minute ago. And I've highlighted in red there the BEIT conference, which is where we'll mostly focus for content, since I assume that's the content that most of you would be interested in. But there were these bonus programs that were also interesting, some tech stuff in there. The technology department at NAB contributed a number of things to that bonus programs track, and that and those were the things we kind of came up with, especially for the Express, that weren't planned to be in Vegas. And so some of those are really kind of timely and interesting. And you can check those out as well. But mostly we'll talk going forward here about the BEIT Express, which was the Broadcast Engineering and IT Conference, and its virtual version. So we decided that we would have all the papers, the presenters who had planned to do papers in Vegas, There was like 90 planned, 90 papers planned, plus some partner content from a couple of different partners, and as well as our opening session. Um, so we wanted to put all that together in the Express as much as possible. And for the papers, because they're typically a solo presenter, we said do-it-yourself videos, but limit to 15 minutes. You can do shorter, but you can't go longer. That's so we could put them into the clock properly for the stream. And and then if you wanted to, you could also provide a slide deck separately. The slide deck could be longer than the one you used in your video because we realized you had to squeeze down to 15 minutes because most people were planning to do a 25-minute talk in Vegas. And you could provide both the slide deck and the video, or one or the other. So, and we left that up to the to each of the presenters to do it. And then we had one of those 4 channels I talked about in the streams dedicated to be it video content. And it turned out that we were easily able to pad that out to, not really pad it out, just use what we got. And it worked out to be just about the 16 hours that we needed to fill without repeating anything other than obviously the time zone repeats. So that was for the stream. But of course, that and more is available still on demand. We also had the 3 partners we normally work with in the BEAT conference: SBE National, the IEEE BTS, and NABA, North American Broadcasters Association. We also added, we added to that 2 other partners, SCTE, which now we actually have as an ongoing partner going forward. We've signed an MOU with them to be an education partner mutually to each other's conferences. And at least for this one time, the Association of Public Radio Engineers, who usually do their own conference called the Public Radio Engineering Conference, many of you are familiar with, that runs before the conference, the NAB show in Vegas. We also tried to work with PBS, but they were so slammed that they did not actually do a virtual version of their TechCon. So they were not a partner with us here, but APRE, rather than do their own, did want to do something, and so they worked with us just to do a small bit of partner content that actually was a really good stuff that ended up being some of our most viewed content as we looked at the metrics later. SBE did an hour of content. Actually, all these partners did an hour of content. Actually, SCTE did a half hour, sorry. And IEEE BTS had already planned to do their own virtualization of what they were going to do at in Vegas, so we just linked to their content on their own site, their own host. So they weren't actually part of our platform this year, but we were still connected with them. I wanted to give a shout out to our BEAT conference committee, because they're the ones who really work hard to get the program together. And of course, so that program was translated over. They would have normally also have been moderators in Vegas, but we didn't have moderators in this format, so they weren't used for that purpose, but they still did a great job putting the program together, selecting through the hundreds of submissions we get to the call for papers, and picking the ones that made the best of the best, and then figuring out how to put them into sessions that made sense. And of course, a couple of SBE National folks are on that committee as well. So thanks again to them. And then the content partners I mentioned that we worked with this year, and with the link over to IEEE. So we had 30 different sessions planned for Vegas on very narrow topics. For the Express, to make it manageable and navigable, we sort of pushed those together into just 8 tracks of content that help you to navigate. And you'll see that in the on-demand navigation system, that you can pick amongst these, you can sort by these 8 general broad categories. And then, of course, each of the partners have their own sort feature as well. So the partner content can be sought after individually, or any of the conference committee curated content can be looked at through these 8 topics. And just to show you how much of what we had planned in Vegas actually was able to be put into the Express. As I said, we had 30 sessions on different topics, and 66 of those papers ended up in our proceedings, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So with those 90 papers, with that amount of time, and about 50 hours of content, but it was set up in a way where you couldn't go to all 50 because some sessions were parallel to each other. In some cases, we only had 1 session, but often we had 2, sometimes even 3 sessions at the same time. The way it worked out, it was about, you could have, if you did nothing but go to be at sessions, you could have gone to about half of them in real time. Whereas here in the Express, going through on demand, you can actually see all of them if you wanted to. And so we got most of them put through into the conference, virtualized conference, split down in the 8 topics, as I said. 10 folks provided videos only, 16 provided slides only, and then 36 provided video and slides, for a total of 62 sessions out of the 90 that we had planned. So not bad. And then if you count our opening session and the partner content, we got about 16 hours of content available on demand now that you can look at. And that doesn't count the ones that are slides only, of course, which you can take as much time as you want on. And there are no videos, so there's no real-time component to that. So 16 hours of video content plus 16 other sessions that have slides only. So here's the site, the page that you get to when you go to this link, the nabshow.com/express. Let's see if this launches and what comes up here. Okay, let me make this full screen. So this is real time here. Let's see if I can slide that out of the way. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So the first thing you do, if you haven't already, you need to register. It's free, but it's easy enough and quick. And now I've already registered, so but if you hadn't, you would be directed to a registration page where you enter just a little bit of data with your email address, and then you get your profile up. And you would, if you had already looked at stuff or wanted to add exhibitors or add sessions, and this goes for what you might have done from Vegas beforehand, because this was available before, and you could have put into your profile stuff, and that stayed there as it moved to the Express. But if you hadn't yet, you can you start there. And the easiest way to do this for now for the on-demand viewing is to go to sessions up here or down here. There's a number of places to do it. This shows you what was the 4 channels that we had for streaming, as well as the live sessions that we did have that are now available on demand, that were interactive. And then, of course, now this shows you the schedule. If you wanted to look at how we scheduled it for Be It Express, we had the this is running a little slow because I'm running Zoom on this same PC here, but you can see the actual schedule in the channel lineup, which is still there, and you could still navigate to the on-demand from it. But just to give you a sense if this works, yeah. It comes, you can either view it in these little tiles. I find with this many things, it's easier to view it in the list mode, which is not the default, but it's a lot easier. So you can see how we started at noon and we had an hour for the opening session, but then all the papers after that were 15 minutes. And if they were less than 15, we padded out with slides or sponsored content or whatever. And we started on the quarter hours straight up with each of the new papers. And we ran them in topic order. So each of these topics were grouped together. So you had however many papers we had on a particular topic would run in sequence. And then we'd move to the next topic and so on. And then, so you see at 8 p.m., we quit, and then of course it reran and reran again, and then at noon the next day we started. And we started with the partner sessions on the Thursday. So you see SBE did their hour to start and so on. And so then that finished off at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, and then that, or rather Thursday, and that repeated two more times to finish at noon on Friday. So that was the live schedule. So now what you want to do to find it on demand is if you, if as long as you got your cursor or something in this search box here, the easiest thing to do is go to Be It Tracks, and you'll see those 8 sessions, 8 topics rather, plus the partner sessions listed here. See if we can get them all on the screen at once. Yeah. And so you could go to Next Gen TV or Ultra HD or radio or regulatory, IP conversion, cloud, whatever, as well as go to look at the SBE session, the SCTE session, or NABAs or APREs. And so if we wanted to look at, let's say, Next Gen TV, for example, what you get is 16 papers there, and it shows when they were scheduled, but these ones that don't have a time are on demand only, which typically here means they were just slide decks. So 4 here that are just slide decks. And then the others are videos, and you can go to any of those from the different, they all ran on Wednesday at once, and you see that they ran on consecutively. So they're still sorted that way. But in any event, it doesn't matter what the timing is. If there's, you wanted to go to something that was just a slide deck up here, click on it, and it takes you to, you see this box called resources. This page tells you the abstract and the presenters. You've probably seen this before if you've used this Map Your Show to navigate around a conference. But this is the link in the resources box to the slide deck, and it downloads it if it's a PowerPoint, or if it's a PDF, and most folks provided PDFs of their PowerPoints, it just opens the PDF. So if we wanted to go back to a session that was, let's see if this one's I think this one's a PDF. And just opens right up in the browser as the slides, and you can work your way through them and so on at your own pace. Now, if we wanted to just go back to a session that was on video, again, click in the search box and you get all these filters. So we were looking at Next Gen TV. Let's look at one of these. This was this was the paper that won Best Paper Award this year from Coherent Logics. Now you get two tabs over here in this resources box, one of which is the video, and this tab resources is the slide deck if they provided one. So you can just go to their slides and watch them and look through them yourself, like this comes up as a PDF, or you can go to the video and watch it in 15 minutes or less, with the presenter showing their video. And of course you can use it, keep it in this little thumbnail, or you can take it full screen and you can see the closed captions, which you can turn off. Or turn back on, and then you can scroll through it if you want, or watch the whole. What this is this one pretty much fills out 15 minutes, and listen to it. I don't have the audio on right now, but you can get that that way, and just browse as you'd like and watch the videos or look at the slides. So let me stop this video and we'll go back to our slides. Yeah, it's a little tricky here with this covering it up. I need to get out of the full screen mode here.
Yeah, as you're doing that, it occurs to me, your opening comments were talking about the short timeline that you had. And those of us working in the business in the Washington area, of course, are fully aware that you folks were all in the process of moving from one office to the other at the same time. And I'm curious, did the move adversely impact your ability to jump and move quickly on this?
Yeah, it was kind of a Murphy's Law, kind of worst case scenario. We had all these things going on. So yeah, for some folks, there was additional burden of having to pack up their office faster than they thought they would have. But most of us, they had a really good logistical plan, and we knew this move was coming. We knew the move was coming years ago. We just didn't know exactly when. And then, of course, when we heard that it was going to be in March or April 1st was going to be our move date right before the show, that was pretty annoying to a lot of people, but we by the time we got through to January, we knew that was coming, and we were planning for it. Then on top of that, the whole pandemic thing came and actually made us have to compress the move schedule up a bit. So yeah, it added something to that whole pain of doing this, but somehow the team managed to pull it together, and we learned a lot in the process, of course, as I said, and we'll give you a couple of lessons here. Anyway, so back to my slides now. After that little browse in real time on the web, wanted to let you know we do still, of course, have the proceedings from our conference like we always did, but what was different this year was we put them online for the first time. And that had nothing to do with the Express. We were planning on doing that starting last year because that was a whole big transition process. No more USB stick or paper book or CD-ROM or anything now. It's just online. And of course, it's still a purchase. So we had to come up with, firewall, a paywall, whatever. And so this was quite a project. But now you can get to the conference proceedings site, make your payment, and then either view the papers in an online way in HTML content, which is what they call responsive, so it looks good on the phone, looks good on any size screen. Uh, it fills the screen, and all the graphics and text are pretty easy to look at. Or you can still download PDFs of any one paper or of all the papers. Um, and one of the other neat things about this, for the first time, we're able to actually sell individual papers, which before you had to buy the whole thing, even if you only wanted to get one. So now you have your choice of full or individual papers. And you get that on the Pilot website. Give you a quick view of that. Pilot website gives you, here we go. One of the subdomains on Pilot is this proceedings page, landing page. And you can look at the whole table of contents first to decide whether you want to purchase or which paper you'd like. And that's just basically a PDF of the proceedings TOC. And then you can look at the committee roster that I showed you earlier. This would all be stuff that would have been up in the front of the book, front matter, as they call it, and with, the copyright info and all that. And then we actually put a little cross-ref promotion to the Be It Express, so people could watch the videos and slides that go along with the papers. Or you just go to the site, and this is sort of an e-commerce, typical e-commerce thing for getting the whole the whole proceedings, or individual papers, which are I think they're priced at $15 each. So that's also available and will continue to be. It was coincidental that it happened to already be planned to be an online thing, but it worked out well since there was no NAB store at which to buy the proceedings in Las Vegas. So, okay, and then back to our slide deck here. What did we learn, and what are we doing next with this? Because obviously this is not going away anytime soon. For this fall, we have a radio show that has recently increased the tech content. Some of you may be familiar with that. That was planned for Nashville this year. That's not going to happen, but we are going to have a virtual show that was already announced, that we would not be doing the physical show and would be doing a virtual show at some point last month. And it's probably next week will be announced what the actual details and plans are for the virtual show. I can tell you a little advance notice, it will be held at the same time that the same week anyway that the real show was going to happen, first week in October. But the actual specifics are still being worked out. But that's coming. And then, of course, our New York show, also scheduled for October. It was announced back in June as well that we would not be doing that show in real life in New York, the Javits Center. And it will be announced again, we think, next week, what the details are for that. And it's looking like it's going to be a really big sort of multi-track festival of things again, like Vegas was. Not quite so big, but a lot of different partners will all be doing virtual things. And again, there's no real downside to folks kind of jumping together as long as you can scale properly. It makes sense, actually, to have partners, even partners that weren't planning to be there physically, can more easily be partners with you at the same kind of aggregation website, and folks can go to one place and then say, oh, let me look at this track, let me look at this track, and so forth, and keep going back and forth. So that's gonna looks to be like it's going to be a really cool kind of aggregation of cool content and exhibitors sites for the New York show or its equivalent, and spread out over probably a number of weeks in October. A lot of other events happening in October as well. Some of them are joining forces, some of them are still doing their own thing, so we're trying to make sure we don't have too much conflict. But given the fact that most of this stuff is going to be on demand, conflicts don't really mean the same thing as they would have in physical shows that were in different cities at the same time. So stay tuned for that. And as I say, I think it literally will be within the next few days. You'll hear what's going on with our fall event. The other thing that I'd like to just let you know is what we learned and what we're planning on doing right now, just very tentatively for next spring. The current plan is that we want to do a real event in Vegas if we can, if we're able to, if the city allows us, if the convention center allows it. But even if we do that, we expect that a number of people from some parts of the world, some parts of the U.S., who knows, or just personal preference, won't want to travel or won't be allowed to or be able to travel. So we expect that the show would be smaller than it would normally be. By the way, the new hall will be open, and we were planning on using that anyway for our conferences. Nice new hall for that, very much optimized for presentation rooms. So we're looking forward to that if we get there. But nevertheless, whatever we do, if we do a real event, it will be very much a hybrid one. And so a lot of the things we learned about doing for this year's show virtually, purely virtually, we're going to try to adapt to have a sort of best of both worlds for a real event with a big virtual outreach for folks around the world. And then, again, addressing the time zone issues as best we can. The difference being that the event will be very much a real-time, truly live event, but we won't have that backhaul problem since everything will be right there in the convention center in Las Vegas for origination. And then we're going to try to do a lot of remote work where we're, have crews roaming the exhibit halls, if there are exhibit halls, to roam, and then putting a lot of that out to extend the exhibitors' reach to the virtual attendees as well. So planning in the process, and lots of contingencies because we still don't know, what the physical show might be like, if it's going to happen at all, what the size is, which hall it's going to be in. So lots of things still up in the air for spring show, but we're trying to plan for any number of these contingencies, and so when we do get more certainty, we can kind of move quickly into action again and try to do the best we can for both people that do come face-to-face and do attend virtually. We're also trying to think of as many ways to entice people to come virtually, to come physically, rather. We'll see how that works out. Although, of course, we don't want to try to make people do something they'd be uncomfortable doing in any event. But particularly for the exhibitors' benefit, getting people to come physically is, of course, a big advantage. And as I said, for the education content, it's almost interchangeable, and in some respects might even be more advantageous because you can actually see things that you might not be able to see because of schedule conflicts in the real world. So that's pretty much an overview of what we did and what we're planning on doing, Happy to take any questions or other comments that folks might have. Some of you probably already perused a lot of this content and may have some other experiences or critiques to share. So thanks.
Skip, there were a couple of questions in the chat while you were talking.
Okay.
Ian McSpadden said, Skip, how many folks worked on this and how many hours in aggregating and curating the content? Incredibly
Yeah.
detailed layout and a great depth of content to pull together on short notice.
Well, thanks. Obviously, as I said, we leveraged a lot of the work that had been taking place for months before when we were planning to do the show in Vegas. So we didn't come up with all the content in just those last 2 months. What we did was had to convert to a virtual presentation mode in those 2 months. And I would say that our conventions office, which has I guess that's about 40, 30 or 40 people. Some of those are exhibit sales folks. But on the education side, for all the conference material, uh, I'd say that we had probably about a dozen folks working both between the tech team and the conventions team, or we call it conventions and business office. Um, so yeah, a dozen to 15 core people, and then some other contributions from other parts of the company where it was necessary. And a lot of folks jumped into it to create some of this new content. So there was, as I mentioned, some that bonus content that's kind of cool to look at because that was all freshly created. So there's maybe 20 some sessions that were created just for the Express from various areas. And a couple of those have some pretty cool tech stuff as well.
All right, there was another question, Willie Holla, and I'm not sure quite what this means, but it says how many respondents. I'm wondering if that's how many hits the system had during its existence so far.
Right. Let me add as a postscript to that last question. Thank you for your kind words on what you thought about it. And then regarding our metrics, it's a little tough to. I mean, we wanted to be able to have some metrics so we thought about that going in, but still, it was a little tough because of ad blocking software and so forth to know what you really got. Our best estimate of actual sort of total visitors to the Express site was between 40 and 50,000. Users were there or have been there since the site went live on May 13th. But that counts everybody who just landed for 10 seconds and moved on. We have much better metrics from Bright Cove as to how many folks actually watched videos and which ones they watched and how long they watched them for, the typical web kinds of metrics. So we drilled down into that to see what was good, what sessions seemed more popular, and that's actually we found even more informative than what we get in Vegas, based on badge scans and head counts in the room and so forth, which is kind of rough estimate, but you do get an idea of which sessions drew more people, obviously. But here we actually have very detailed information about who watched what video, who watched what slide deck, and not who. It's anonymized data, but how many people did. And so there we had decent numbers, probably 10 to 15,000 core viewers who actually watched a lot of the content. And in the Be It track itself, we certainly had in the low thousands, which is more than what we would get in Las Vegas for folks who buy the conference registration. But of course, it was free and it was easy to get to from all over the world. So again, the convenience factor. One of the things we're going to try to do for next year is hopefully be able to somehow learn how to monetize even the virtual content. Obviously, you have to price it appropriately based relative to the real face-to-face content, which is probably more valuable. But that means you also have travel expense to get to that. So, again, you have to think of what the market can bear and what's a fair price for value. And so that's going to be yet another challenge, is to figure out how to, because this year was free, and so it was easy. It was just like, yeah, all comers. And in the streaming, the 2 days of streaming, we didn't even make people register for that. So you could just go right to the stream when you went to the Express site, click on one of the channels, change channels. So we could not collect a lot of real deep data on that. And that's where we just got the like typical web metrics of people hitting your site. And that's so putting all that together is where we came up with the ballpark of 40 to 50,000 users. And how many of those are uniques versus returns, hard to say. So it's kind of rough, but we were encouraged, though. At least we thought the numbers were probably better than we expected.
And then there was another question: what happens to all the content after August?
Yeah, good question. It's not going to go away. Again, I can give you a little peek into something that hasn't been announced yet, but will be soon. Probably sometime in that August timeframe this year, we're going to launch something that's a permanent virtual kind of archive presence. We've been tossing around the term NAB365. IBC uses that same term, IBC365. They started that last year. I'm not sure what it's going to be called, but it's that kind of a concept. So most, if it's, unless it was super timely and now is not, has no evergreen value. So I think pretty much all of the Be It content will be archived there. So it will remain available, and then the details of what the access is to that is to be announced, but it won't go away. So it'll still be available once and there won't be a period where it's gone. Well, this new site will be launched before the NAB Show Express stuff is pulled down, or before that site goes away.
That's what we had in the chat. I think if it's okay, I'll take down the screen share and get everybody back.
Do I need to undo that?
I think I can do it.
Okay.
And we brought everybody back, and you can either unmute yourself or I can unmute everybody, but I don't know how much background noise people have, if there are any spoken comments. Before we, since people might start to leave, I'm just going to cover one more thing. Don't forget, 2 days from now at 7:30, July 16th, there is the SBE Town Hall. That's at 7:30. And if you go to the SBE37.org homepage, there's a link for that. Also, at the end of the month on July 30th, there is the history of television that was put together by SBE, but they've invited everyone to join, and we'll have links for that when we get a little closer. And our next meeting is Bob Heil, August 11th. It will also be virtual, and we'll put together the meeting and registration soon.